guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called 15 Incredible Geography Facts about the UK. So this looks very exciting. Let's check it out and comment, like and subscribe.
Think you know the UK? Think again, because beneath its royal castles and rainy skies lie some mind-blowing geography facts that'll leave you stunned. From a river that gallops upstream to cliffs that drop like skyscrapers into the Atlantic, here are 15 geography facts about the UK that you probably didn't know.
Okay.
First, head to the funnel-shaped Severn estuary on England's west coast, where the sea performs a daily high-wire act twice every day. As the Bristol Channel narrows like a gigantic megaphone, the incoming tide is squeezed into a roaring wall of water that can reach 5 stories and rush inland at over 10 kilometers an hour.
So
that produces
weird.
a tidal range of about 15 meters, second globally only to Canada's Bay of Fundy. And on spring tide,
Was that like a time lapse? That's crazy.
the Severn bore bursts upriver, tempting hardy surfers to ride a wave moving upstream. Engineers even eye the estuary for carbon-free, clean, renewable power schemes that could one day light millions of homes.
Oh my god, really?
Look north to the Scottish Highlands, where Ben Nevis thrusts 1,345 meters above sea level, higher than any other point in the British Isles. Surveyors confirmed Ben Nevis's precise height in 2016 using laser GPS, updating the accuracy but not the number itself. Standing on the summit feels surreal. The Atlantic glitters just 16 kilometers away, meaning you can trace a line from Britain's deepest valley floor to its roof in little more than a short half marathon.
That's
the peak
crazy.
is actually the eroded core of an ancient
I did not know it was like that small of a distance.
volcano. Its collapsed caldera forms today's dramatic north face cliffs that lure ice climbers every winter. From Britain's rooftop, we plunge into an unexpected inland ocean of fresh water waiting below. Follow that descent into the Great Glen and you meet Loch Ness, a dark trench of water that hides more than legends. At 7.4 cubic kilometers, the loch alone holds nearly twice as much fresh water as every lake in England and Wales combined, even though its surface area is modest to cartographers and holidaymakers alike. That
Yeah, I think it's only famous because of the monster, to be honest.
bending volume comes from depth. Ness plunges to 230 meters, and the peat-stained clarity limits sunlight, creating an inky
I would assume that's like quite deep, but to be honest, I do not know what's the medium for actual lakes, so I do not know.
abyss where sonar replaces eyesight. Glacial action carved the valley, but it also follows the Great Glen Fault, an ancient tectonic scar that still causes minor earthquakes today.
Oh, really?
Leaving this colossal
Did not know
reservoir,
that.
our next stop explores why Britain's edge appears to stretch forever. Zoom out on a satellite map and the United Kingdom
It kind of looks like a ferret. I think like the head, I think that's Scotland, like in the upper right side. I think it looks like a weird ferret.
looks frayed, as though the sea gnawed the land into lace. Add up every bay, sea loch and islet, and the UK's coastline exceeds 12,000 kilometers, an estimate that varies
That's a lot.
depending on how you measure it, thanks to something called the coastline paradox.
What is that?
The figure includes tidal inlets and countless twists and turns. The count includes part of an archipelago of more than 6,000 islands, from windswept St Kilda to sun-kissed Sark. Only 123 of which are permanently inhabited by UK residents.
Oh my god.
Even at 30 kilometers a day, it would take you nearly a year to walk the UK's mainland edge, assuming you don't get sidetracked by one of its 6,000 islands. And with that
I think it would be very funny to see someone try this.
marathon of shorelines behind us, jagged rock takes center stage. Cross the Irish Sea to County Antrim, where the shore suddenly turns geometric. 40,000 interlocking basalt columns step into the Atlantic at Giant's Causeway, the cooled skin of a lava flow that erupted 60 million years ago. The basalt cooled from the outside in, forming hexagonal cracks, like drying mud, only forged by lava on a geological scale. Some stand 12 meters tall, yet measure only half a meter across. UNESCO lists the site for raw beauty more than many cathedral floors and textbook clarity of its geology, and scientists still study the columns to understand how cooling rates dictate rock patterns.
It doesn't even look, it looks man-made.
Leaving Northern Ireland's natural paving, we venture to peatlands that help keep the planet cooler. Return to the far north of Scotland,
That's
where the
awesome.
flow country sprawls across Caithness and Sutherland. This blanket bog covers roughly 4,000 square kilometres, an area larger than
That's a lot,
Cornwall,
right?
and in 2024 it became the world's first peatland World Heritage Site. Its spongy moss layers are up to 8 metres thick and lock away an estimated 400 million tonnes of carbon, making the
What?
landscape more effective at climate cooling than many forests. Underfoot, pools shimmer between hummocks that host carnivorous sundews and nesting greenshank. Geologists believe the bog began forming after the last ice sheets retreated. After gliding over this vast natural sponge, we step onto an imaginary
I did not know something like this was over there, to be honest.
line that sets the world's clocks ticking. Now,
Okay.
stand astride an invisible stripe in Greenwich, and you can place one boot in the Eastern Hemisphere and the other in the Western. The
Yeah,
prime
that's totally
meridian,
right.
fixed here by international agreement in 1884, defines 0 degrees longitude and underpins most time zones and GPS calculations. Steel markers run through the Royal Observatory courtyard, yet modern satellite data show the gravitational meridian sits about 100 meters east.
Oh, no.
Proof that standards can drift with better measurements. Each day, tourists count down to 1 p.m. when the red time ball atop the observatory drops, a Victorian signal once used by ships on the Thames to set chronometers. From this
Okay, but it's funny that the measurement's wrong, right? Like, that's funny.
temporal crossroads, we fly north again towards Scandinavia without leaving the UK.
Yeah,
Touchdown
why?
in Lerwick, Shetland's capital, and you're geographically closer to Bergen in Norway than to London. The town lies roughly 357 kilometres west of Bergen, but about 970 kilometres north of the UK's political heart,
Yeah,
giving these
it's
islands
closer.
a Nordic flavour and culture, daylight
Really?
patterns and accent. At 60 degrees north, midsummer nights never go fully dark, a phenomenon locals call the simmer dim, where the sky glows long after sunset. Despite the
God.
remoteness, over 1,600 archaeological sites record a human presence stretching back 5 millennia, from Viking longhouses to World
That's
War radar posts.
incredibly
And
old.
wildlife watching is extraordinary, with puffins everywhere. Now swap sea spray for raw Atlantic
I wanna
air
go
at
there.
cliffs so high they create their own weather. Sail 8 hours west from mainland Scotland, and the basalt ramparts of
island.
St Kilda rise abruptly from the Atlantic. Connaught, the archipelago's summit, stands only 430 metres high, yet the drop from its crest, the waste below, forms the highest sea
That's
cliffs
scary.
in the United Kingdom. These vertical walls are so sheer that formers nest halfway down, safe from humans but not from swooping skuas. Wind
Oh my
speeds
God.
here have topped 200 kilometers per hour, and centuries of exposure, coupled with illness, food shortages, and isolation, led the last permanent residents to request evacuation in
That's crazy that people actually attempted to live over there.
1930. Their homes
Yeah.
now serve as poignant bothies for visiting scientists. Leaving these storm-sculpted precipices behind, we dive beneath the waterline in search of Britain's
please
hidden
move.
depths. Back on the mainland, Loch Morar hides among the hills of Lochaber. At 310 meters deep, it is
It's
the
real
deepest
weird.
freshwater body in the United Kingdom, so deep that 1.5 Blackpool towers could stand end to end below its
Okay.
surface without breaching the air. Loch
Scary.
Ness comes second, though it often steals the spotlight, thanks to
Yeah.
its fame and nearly equal depth. While Loch Ness was carved mainly by glaciers, Morar lies in a tectonic rift deepened by ice, creating underwater trenches few divers have fully mapped. The loch remains remarkably clear,
Can humans actually go over there?
supporting an isolated population of Arctic char trapped since the last ice age, and fueling local legends of a shy monster named Morak. During calm
That wasn't a real photo, right? Like that was like photoshopped in.
days, divers report near total silence. We return to the River
no
Severn,
wonder.
but this
No one
time
lives
far
there.
upstream, where geography turns the tide into a spectacle. The Severn bore occurs when a high Atlantic tide charges up the narrowing river, forming a single breaking wave up to 2 meters tall. Traveling at speeds of 13 kilometers per hour, the bore can cover 50 kilometers inland
Okay.
and remains surfable for more than an hour, longer than many ocean rides. It appears
that's
about
insane.
130 days a year, timed around new and full moons. And ancients once consulted the phenomenon to predict seasonal floods, and photographers stake riverbanks hours in advance. With
I think like 100 years ago, I would have thought like this is witchcraft actually.
boards packed away, let's trade riverbanks for an unexpectedly tiny slice of urban Britain. Blink and you might miss Britain's smallest city. St David's in Pembrokeshire earned its city status because of a medieval cathedral, yet its permanent population hovers around 1,850 residents.
That's tiny.
Smaller than many English villages. The entire urban area could fit inside London's Hyde Park. But each summer, tidal waves of visitors arrive to hike the rugged Pembrokeshire Coast Path and kayak with Atlantic seals.
Oh, that's very pretty.
Ancient pilgrims once considered 2 trips here worth 1 voyage to Rome, underscoring its historic spiritual pull. Urban comforts meet wild headlands within walking distance, proving that the UK's civic map is as quirky as its physical one. From this pocket-sized city, we embark on Britain's longest journey, straight across the whole island. Draw a diagonal across the island of Great Britain from the granite cliffs of Land's End to the windswept signpost of John O'Groats.
Diagonal.
By road, the journey spans about 1,407 kilometers, roughly the distance from Lagos to Accra and back. And cyclists tackling the challenge climb more than 13,000 meters of elevation gain.
How long
the fastest riders have covered it in under 2 days, and countless charity endurance events trace the route annually. Yet walkers still spend 6 weeks weaving through farmland, moors, and highlands.
That's
that
crazy.
Staggering length fits inside a single island less than a third the size of Madagascar, highlighting the UK's compressed variety. Our next statistic flips expectations again by revealing which river is really Britain's longest. Most atlases give the River Severn the title at 354 kilometers, but if you trace the Thames to its furthest headstream, it quietly edges ahead. If you accept the modest Gloucestershire stream called the Churn as the Thames,
I think honestly the most famous one is the Thames, right?
Thames headwater. The Thames system actually measures 369 kilometers, 15 kilometers longer than the Severn. Hydrologists still debate which source should count, turning this into a pub quiz favorite. Either way, the competing rivers illustrate how tiny upstream details can rewrite national superlatives, and they remind us that geography lives in the fine print as well as the grand vistas. And satellite data continues refining these measurements further year after year. Measuring river length can be surprisingly tricky. Seasonal flow, satellite precision, and which tributary you count all affect the total. Our final fact of today drops more than 2 football fields in a single plunge. Deep in the Assynt Mountains of northwest Scotland, the ground suddenly vanishes at Esachualun, with a vertical drop of 200 meters, more than 3 times the height of Niagara. This cascade is the tallest above-ground waterfall anywhere in the United Kingdom. Stell Waterfall is more accessible and often mistaken for the tallest, but Esachualun holds the true vertical record. Reaching it is an adventure. Hikers slogged 5 kilometers across bog and boulder, while others board boats from Kailasku to view the ribbon of water plunging into Loch Glencoe. After heavy rain, spray drifts so high that golden eagles ride the uplift alongside the water on misty days.
Oh my
God. It's a final soaring reminder that for all its crowded cities, the UK still hides raw, elemental drama at the very edge of the map. So which of these UK geography facts was your favourite? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more jaw-dropping content.
Okay, it was very interesting because I think a lot of these places I did not really know that they existed actually like in the world, in the universe, well, in the planet, but less in the UK. Like I would have never thought of this. But I think it's because usually I think, at least I know that when I think of the UK, I have like, again, a very specific sort of idea of, even if it's just like places, not the UK in general, as in like, oh, I think of like teacups and not like the buses. No, I think like when I think about, oh, UK geography, I think again of like something very specific. I think either like the countryside with the little, like those like smaller villages, well, in the country, and there's like vegetation, but there's also like those little villages that are all have like very particular houses. Or I think of like London, which obviously is a huge town, like it's a metropolis, and even some places like Scotland as well, which I think they have like, again, I have a very particular idea how they look, like with the whole like stone. There's like a lot of cobblestones, and the architecture is quite particular. But I never actually think of like, and it sounds crazy, right? Because the UK is like a gorgeous place. But, and maybe I think of like, again, maybe in Scotland, like I think of like, oh, those like huge, like the great like landscape, like the Scottish Highlands, like that's what I think of. But in the actual other parts of the UK, you know, as in like England and other places, I don't know why I do not really actually think about this. I think more of the cities. So it is true that I at least I know that I'm not alone in this. it's more like, oh, city based, but it's like they have like so much incredible like nature that surrounds them, that it's like, wow, it's kind of crazy that they're not maybe like not as famous. Maybe it's because London, I think, and the other sort of like villages, I think like they take up like a really big sort of like space. So it's easy to sort of like overlook all of these things, but it's a shame. Like, no, we should definitely be looking more into this. I think like there were I want to visit, like there was a place, I think it was the Bergen, I think it was. I want to visit that one so badly. I think it was the one that because they were like located like very far, well, like they're basically above the island, and they're closer to Scandinavia, and I think it was Sweden. I would love to visit that place. It looked gorgeous. Like, it looked very pretty, but I think I would love to visit just because of the idea that apparently it has a lot of like, they're British, but they have like a lot of Scandinavian influence. And even like in how they talk, their accents, and I think like even the architecture like must be, and probably the food and culturally it must be like a weird mix between like Scandinavia and the UK. I would love to visit that place. I had no, is that actually Scotland? I have no idea, because they have to belong, I would say it's Scotland, right? Like that's like on top. So I wouldn't know, but I would love to visit. I think like that's on top of my list. It looked incredible. There's also like the remote like little town that the abandoned towns. Actually, I would also love to visit those. Those I think were also in Scotland. Come to think about it, a lot of places I think in Scotland, or that one I'm not that sure, that people had to like abandon because it was like, this is like a very harsh place to actually try to make a living out of. So they had to move, I think like in the 1930s, like the last residents were like, this is actually enough. I think it was either Ireland or Scotland, but people were like, no, this is it. And I wouldn't blame them. It looked like a very hard place to actually try to attempt to, I don't know, populate. There was like, again, you have like the winds, like the rugged sort of like landscape. I don't think humans were actually meant to live over there. So it is kind of funny that humans still attempted it. They were like, no, we will attempt to actually live here, and we will try to make a living and create a village and a town. But we gave up as humans. The human race was like, no, absolutely not. This place is way too hard. I cannot make a living out of here. So it is true, because again, it looked quite hard. And it's not just the isolation, because I think a lot of these places are a little bit isolated, but it's still, I think you can just like, no, you can live normally. But I think the fact that it was like, yes, the actual, like the winds are crazy, like the rugged landscape, as in like, there's probably a lot of like things happening that you can't actually like live peacefully. Like in my house, I'm trying to build a house and I can't. So, and maybe that happens in other places, because again, like nature happens, right? Like natural disasters occur, like sometimes there's tornadoes, sometimes there's earthquakes, floods, I don't know, like other things that you can't control. But I think it's all between, I think, what you're willing to sort of like take. And it's like, well, it's not happening constantly, right? Like, well, tornadoes, sort of, but they do kind of happen constantly, and depending on the area. But usually they're not, it's a thing that's manageable. But in this case, I think like, it must have been like so badly for people to be just like, no, this is enough. Like, I'm leaving. And it's crazy that they also like, they had the houses, and they sort of like left the houses. Like, we actually we managed to actually build them, and we built the houses. But again, like the climate, the weather, the whole like town, not a city, was so like incredibly hard that we packed our things and we just left, and the houses are still there. And I would love to visit the houses. It's like, oh my God. Obviously, I'm imagining something like very particular. Probably it's not like that. It wasn't like a natural disaster of like people just abandoned this. No, they probably they just took their stuff and they just left. But still the houses remain, which I think, oh my God, that's so interesting. And apparently like scientists actually it's good because it's shelter. And it's like, yeah, thank you for leaving the houses. But I think I would love to I don't know, take a look at the actual house, like how it is inside, and actually just visit the place, because it's like, well, yeah, with the mindset of you're not actually living there, it's like, I think it would be very interesting. And I don't know, I'm intrigued to see like how hard it is to actually spend a few nights over there. Probably a few nights, I think it would be okay. But yeah, if you start thinking long term, as in like, I'm trying to live here, probably would be like a disaster, and you would understand why these people left. But I think I would love to visit that one. That was like really on top of my list as well. The other like tiny town, I was like the smallest village, I think it was called. It was only like 1,000 people that live there, which, oh my God, I would love it. It looks very like, again, when I think of like an old sort of like old British kind of like town, I would think of something like this. It's like, oh my god, it's so tiny, and it's like, yeah, they're only recognized as a town or as a city because they have like a church, a medieval church, which I would love to visit because it looked very beautiful. So I would definitely I would go there because it looked, I don't know, it looked like very interesting to me. The other sort of like natural places, the waterfall, of course, it looked quite scary. It looked like quite scary because it is quite tall. So it's just like I was scared of like falling off. But yes, I know it's safe. Like it's no one's like jumping out of the waterfall. Yes, hopefully that's not a thing. And you just hike. It wasn't like a long hike. I think it was just like 5 kilometers. I don't think that's quite a lot, but yeah, the fact that you're like so high is like, oh my god, that's a little scary. But I would love to attempt it. It looked quite fun. The whole like bicycles, the cyclists that go like from one end to the other, that seems like a crazy like thing to attempt. I think apparently they do it yearly. I would not attempt to do that. I think that's not like, that's way too crazy for me. But I think, yeah, I don't know. I would love to look into like how long does it actually, like apparently it was like 2 days, which I think is crazy. It's like that seems small. Like I that seems like a few amount of days. Like I would assume it takes you like longer. And there's people that actually apparently do it like by walking, which I think is like even crazier. I bet I would be so intrigued about like both of these, like I don't know, journeys. I don't know. They're I don't know what to call them. Like there's like sporting events. I don't know. But I would love to speak to someone that has either done this or again just looked up the actual event in general, because I have like so many questions. It's like, well, you just like wake up at 6 a.m. you start your day, and probably you have to be like, well, I have to be, I don't know, I have to arrive in, I don't know, what's the middle of England? I have no idea. Well, not England, the UK. I don't know. Do I have to like attempt to cross like the Scottish border in, I don't know, by 10 p.m.? I don't know. Like I would guess you have your little schedule, and you're sort of like, I have to like be in this town in like this hour and this and this and that. And what happens if you get delayed? I don't know, like you're tired, something happens, it rains, I don't know, like, and how are you stopping? Like you're stopping like one, like, oh, I'm stopping at like 1 for lunch, I have 1 hour, but then, I don't know, like you're getting hungry as well. Oh my god, the more I think about this, like the more questions I have. Because either it's when you're cycling or you're walking, like you're gonna get like, you're consuming a lot of calories. So it's like, oh my god, I'm hungry, but also I can't like eat that much because it's like I'm gonna do a physical activity, I don't want to throw up. So I can't, it's like maybe it's like people that run marathons, I would assume, like where like you're just like doing constant physical activity and you have to maintain the energy. Although that's again, marathons are like what, 4 or 5 hours, well, depending on your time, sometimes 6, but you know, like this is longer, which I think is like, it's crazy. Like you're slower, but it's also like you're going at a slower pace, but also it takes you like, it's a longer situation, like so you're doing this for longer. So again, I have so many questions for those people. That they're actually like the rivers, I think like they have like very interesting rivers. The one that goes upstream, that looks crazy. The one I think like they do, obviously there's a scientific explanation, but it looks crazy like out of context. The one that's like the huge like wave, I think that was so insane to me because people were surfing, which obviously, of course, what else are you gonna do? You have to make the most out of it. But again, if I were like an old person, like a person who lived there in like, I don't know, the 1800s, I would have think like, oh my god, like the gods are here to spite. I'm being smithed. I don't know. Like it would be crazy. Like I think like this is the work of a god. This is the work of a witch or I don't know, a wizard. Like I'd be very scared. But it's really funny because it looks very, very strange. It looks like, I don't get it. Like is this manipulated like by CGI, or is this like actually like a real clip that actually occurred? Which obviously I'm pretty sure that's the case, but it looked crazy. Like if I didn't know the context, I would assume like, oh, it's like a special effect, like someone, you know, manipulated this like on a computer, and it wasn't like that. But I think I love the fact that there's like surfers, and I didn't know that you could surf in the UK. Maybe I'm being very naive about this. Again, I don't really know much about this sport, but when I think of like surf, I think of people like in beaches and in actual beaches on, you know, like very nice weather, it's hot, and people on beaches. Again, like just like a beach, sort of like beach culture, beach life, and I absolutely did not think, oh, in the UK, can you actually surf in the UK? I had no idea, but I think it makes sense. It's like they have a lot of rivers, which again, not the place that you would actually surf, like you surf in the ocean, but they are surrounded by a lot of ocean water. Like it's an island, which I think like you can get a little bit lost in the context of like they have so many things, but it's like it's important to remember at the end of the day, like they're surrounded by water. Like the UK is an island, so it is like, okay, well maybe it does make a little sense again. Although the water is quite different, like that sea water, it's very cold, and again, like they probably do not. It's not really a good place to surf probably, unless that you're like in this very specific spot, which I think, okay, so if I want to surf in the UK, I would have to move like to this particular area so I can like learn to surf, which, okay, sure, but it's really funny to me that this is like one specific place in which you can actually surf. Like who knew that the UK had surfers, which, you know, news to me, but good for them. But that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.